Hi, this is Axel from dreamsanctuary.net. For this third video, I wanted to look at something more challenging, so I decided that I would go through a dream series I've had. It is made of 2 dreams, one long and one short. Given that this is going to be an advanced case study, I recommend looking at more material on the topic of dream analysis. My suggestions for this time are an easy guide to Jungian dream interpretation. This is a neat summary of Robert Johnson's method of dream interpretation from his book Inner Work. It's concise and touches on all the essential points. The website of the original article is down, so I can only share a screen capture, but it's worth reading. How to analyze a dream using Jungian dream analysis. This is another article that follows Robert Johnson's method, and the author will take you through a step-by-step dream analysis similar to the ones I am doing here. You will be able to compare and contrast his way of doing things and mine. Next, Carl Jung's 9 rules of dream interpretation. In this YouTube video, Jared Chan presents 9 rules or guidelines for dream interpretation, quoting Jung extensively through each point. I really recommend going through the video and not just looking at the 9 rules. Finally, let's get this out of the way. Please refer to the first video of the series as they are meant to follow each other. Also, I have a document called Examples of Dream Interpretation that can be downloaded for free on my website. You'll find 20 of my dreams analyzed and how I've dealt with them. Let's jump right into the first dream. I've titled this dream Stefan's Event, Traumatized Christius and Sofia, and I had it in February 2021. I am at a crowded therapeutic event organized by Stefan. I am standing on the side of the room, looking at the event in a supportive manner because, though I don't fully agree with everything that is being presented, the knowledge being shared allows one to start the work of self-knowledge and healing trauma. At the end of the event, a couple who waited patiently comes towards Stefan. They are suffering a deeper trauma than what was talked about during the seminar, so they are requesting some personalized help from him. As soon as we realize how hurt they are, a group of people and I make a circle around them, as if to maintain a healing cocoon. Stefan steps in the middle of the cocoon and it seems he is going to start a healing process. Yet he appears to be overwhelmed by the task and he starts talking about details of a good therapeutic practice instead, saying things such as, facing away is a proper position to approach a client. This won't do, I say to myself, and we break the healing cocoon that was very uncomfortable to hold. A bit later, I start talking to the traumatized couple and I say to them, in an authoritative manner and as an overseer of the therapeutic event, something like, there's no point in waiting. You will not get any help that way. Suddenly, I hear a voiceover saying that what I just said liberated them from the need to wait on Stefan or anyone to assist them. This was accompanied by a feeling of radiant and glorious realization. I learned later that this traumatized couple was named Christius and Sofia. The dream skips. I am now an obese, naked fat man in a dirty car full of trash. It's nighttime and I'm parked around the house of Christius and Sofia. Someone is approaching my car and I don't like it. I want to scare them away from me. To do so, I get out of the car and, still naked, I run at them screaming while touching my testicles. I managed to shock the person that was near my car. It was a woman. A thought goes quickly through my mind. Was she Sofia or related to Sofia? But I go back in the car and drive away. My car is full of trash, so I can't drive well. I end up driving on a road shaped like a downward spiral, creating many accidents by bumping into other people's cars. This is a fairly long dream, and as you can see, there's a lot of important moments that do not have any associations. The main symbols here are Stefan Molyneux, which I regard as someone who teaches valuable therapeutic insights. Overall, a positive and competent figure, but with some limitations. The healing cocoon is a kind of supportive structure, a space that was held for healing to happen, kind of energy of the self. Christius and Sofia, which is the main symbol here and throughout the dream, is associated with natural man and natural woman, what man and woman are and should be. There's a hint here at Christ and the Gnostic Sophia being represented as symbols of the self, Christ being the masculine and Sophia being the feminine. Looking at the personal context, not much came to mind. The general context is that I was focused on building my website at the time. So this dream is not strictly speaking a compensation, rather it brings forward something unknown, something unconscious. You might remember the definition that a dream is information you should have but don't, This is exactly the case. This is information I should have, but I don't. Let's now look at the dream, scene by scene and moment by moment. The first moment of the first scene is me supporting the event, and there's this relationship between Stefan and me. As you might have figured out, Stefan Molyneux represents the competent but imperfect teacher side of me. So there is this nuanced feeling of, this is the right thing to do, but. The next moment, the couple comes forward, we build a cocoon, Stefan fails to provide healing, and I say it won't do. The first feeling here is horror at the trauma of the couple. Then there's the empathy as we build the cocoon, but it feels really uncomfortable. And then there is this kind of overwhelm or maybe performance anxiety by Stefan. And finally, the strong disappointment that this is not happening. In the last moment, I'm talking to the couple, saying to them there's no point in waiting. Then the voiceover appears and announces liberation. So the feeling here is a closure on what happened. See, this was a perfect opportunity for healing, and it did not or could not happen. Therefore, something else has to be done, and I think this is why there is this feeling of freedom or being freed from. In the second scene, there's first this vulgar character, and it's nighttime near the house. I remember feeling gross, lazy, gluttonous, a real scumbag if you want. Then someone approaches me, and I do this obscene behavior. I've thought about why the dream would show me behaving like this. It's undeniable that poor and impulsive character play a role. But then why would the dream show that I'm parked near the house of Christius and Sofia in the first place? And why is the person that I tried to scare away related to Sofia? I believe that the presence of the woman and the proximity of the house reveal the worst aspects in me. It's similar to feelings of inadequacy or unworthiness that arise when you are entering a sacred place. And I believe that's why I act this way, because I'm afraid of being exposed or revealed, even if only by contrast. In essence, I double down on my bad behavior to avoid the responsibility that is linked to the couple. At the end, I drive away in a downward spiral. And there is this feeling of shaking my head, kind of disapproval at the compound mistakes I'm making. So if we look at the story arc of the first part, there is this supportive therapeutic event, and we are being shown limitations on the healing that can take place. So there is this tension between teaching and healing. And at the end there is this failure, but also liberation. The second part is this vulgar character that is afraid of being exposed or inadequate, and he doubles down to escape, which leads to a disastrous downward spiral. So this is my interpretation. The first part of the dream is showing that I'm not addressing the serious trauma at hand, but rather that I'm shifting to something easier like teaching. Unexpectedly, this failure to heal has a liberating effect on the traumatized couple. This reversed the situation from Christius and Sofia waiting for me to me being invited towards them. This reveals all my worst aspects with an emphasis on an unwillingness to put them aside. The dream shows that I'm likely to double down, which leads to a disastrous future. This was a big dream, and I did not really know what to do with it. So more than action, I would say I had realizations. The first one is that I realized that something in me needs serious help, but I can't provide it. There is also this tension between teaching and healing, and which one I should focus on. And finally, I realized more of my inadequacies and the need to manage them instead of exaggerating them. This was the first long dream. I'll now skip to the short dream I had 3 days later. The next dream is named, Did you get the books? I am riding a bus to get to an apartment. I look at the time and notice that I missed an important online meeting by 1 hour. Still on the bus, I disable airplane mode on my phone. I have loads of new email and a voicemail from my mother saying in an agitated voice, "Can you respond? Have you received the books?" I did receive the books she sent me by post, but I haven't said anything to her yet. So the 3 main symbols here are an important online meeting, and so that day I actually had that meeting, but I did not miss it. Airplane mode is something I use frequently to be offline, which means to be inaccessible. And books would be information in its largest sense. The personal context would be first this important online meeting that I had in real life. So we can see here the difference between the outer world, where I had that meeting, and the inner world, where I missed it. And obviously there's the context of the previous dream, the Christius and Sofia one. The story arc of this short dream is something like this. I'm late for something important, a lot of information is coming my way, and it requires a response, but I haven't responded yet. And so the interpretation would be that the unconscious, through the symbol of the mother, is pointing out that I got the books, but I've not responded yet. It feels insistent and important to do so. The books here is referring to the information I extracted from the previous dream, so there is a traumatized couple in need in my inner world. So I realized I left my inner work unattended and I need to do it. And so this time I decided to go with active imagination. Before I talk about active imagination, I would like to say a few words about the therapeutic model, Internal Family Systems, or IFS for short. IFS worked with the fact that the psyche is made of autonomous subpersonalities, named parts, and that one can re-establish a positive, supportive, and healing relationship between us and our parts. For instance, let's say that I am too sensitive to criticism. Then IFS would lead me to visit the part of me that is too sensitive to criticism. By reconnecting with that part, I would learn more about its role, what's happening with it, why it's behaving that way, and I would show gratitude for what it has done until this point. As I have been in IFS, I would describe the actual process as a kind of visualization of my inner world, where I would meet those autonomous parts of me, while the therapist would check that the process unfolded without issues. The role of an IFS therapist is essentially non-intrusive, unless of course something needs to be pointed out. What is most important here is that there are guidelines to follow if one wants to engage in that therapeutic process. In my opinion, these guidelines offer an invaluable basis to learn the right attitude for active imagination. The most important guidelines I would like to touch here are: never proceed if your mind is busy or your emotional state is unclear. See, if you start internal family system or active imagination with an unclear mind or unstable emotional state, you will see things, you will talk to parts, and you will experience strange visuals. But the process will be disrupted. It will loop, inner talk might turn aggressive, conflicts can happen, and all kind of strange tricks will take place. So let me make this point extremely clear. Things will happen, but not the right ones. It's not going to have its therapeutic quality and will essentially be a waste of time, if not create more problems within. So we have to check our mind and our emotional state. To have a clear mind, there's all kinds of techniques. I like the one where I put my worries in a box. I imagine a nice looking box and I slowly, carefully and respectfully put all my worries in it. See, I'm not abandoning them or dismissing them. I simply temporarily put them away so I can do my things. Those problems and those worries that I'm putting in the box are important and they're mine to deal with. So I intend to pick them up. This is something I'm responsible for and I want to take ownership. So if you're going to use this technique, make sure you emphasize this. For the emotional stability, the guidelines in IFS emphasize 8 C's, which are calm, connection, compassion, creativity, clarity, curiosity, confidence, and courage. So those are the best terms to describe the emotional state you should be in if you're going to engage in this process. If you don't have them, or most of them at least, you should not engage in the process, but you should rather work on yourself first. And so if you're not in that state of the 8 C's, IFS described this as being blended with parts. It's like you have an emotion and it's merged with you, and so you have to work on yourself first. Maybe you have some fear or some confusion, or maybe too much judgments or rationalization going on. And so you need to disengage from them, detach from them, and work with them first, before going with the rest of the process. Finally, it's always better to work with a therapist. I'm going to mention 2 reasons here. The first one is that your therapist will be able to see your blind spots. So I had this issue and I spent a whole week trying to figure it out and I couldn't. And when I brought it up with my therapist, she was able to see the issue in 5 minutes. So she was able to see my blind spots. The second point is that when you go to therapy, there's an increase in healing energies that's available for you. The therapeutic space with the second person allows you to get deeper into the process when you're supported, or if someone else is holding space for you if you want. If you're interested in the IFS process, I would refer you to Earley's self-therapy for a practical overview and guidelines of the IFS process. Now I will describe my practice for active imagination. First, I do a kind of setup. So I take a few deep breaths, a pause at the top, and as I exhale, my breathing rhythm is slowing down. I do that a few times just to get in the mood. Then I like to put my attention on my solar plexus. I see this as a spot that moves up for every inhale and down for every exhale. It moves up as I inhale and it moves down as I exhale. I do this a few times until I feel grounded or earthed. This is a good time to check that your mind is actually clear and that your emotional state is stable. So, do you feel calm? Do you feel connected? Compassionate? If that's the case, you can go forward. Otherwise, I would work on myself or stop the process. The next step is an induction, or going into the unconscious. And I do that by visualizing opening a door nearby and taking the stairs down. And so for each breath, I imagine seeing the next stair. And for every exhale, I imagine moving down. Inhale, I see the next stair. Exhale, I step down. Inhale, I see the next stair. Exhale, I move down. I repeat this at least 10 times, just so I don't rush that part. At the end of the stairs, I go through another door. Having gone through that door, I have reached an inner sanctuary where I feel safe. For me, this place looks like a valley. There's grass, there's trees, mountains, rivers at the distance, and it's a place where I feel safe. Yours might be completely different. I look around and see if something spontaneous is happening, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If not, I set an invitation by spreading a picnic blanket with food and drinks. I try to make the invitation as convivial and respectful as possible. I try to emulate the feeling of a Japanese tea ceremony. And as I imagine sitting, eating or drinking on that picnic blanket, I wait and see if something happens. When I do that, I do not have a specific intention of what should happen. If nothing happens, nothing happens. If something happens, I will go along with it, but I will check my emotional state, see if I'm calm, connected, curious, I have clarity, confidence and courage. Always work on yourself first before engaging with what's happening in your imagination. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to monitor your emotional state as you do this. Now that you have an idea of how I do active imagination, I will tell you what happened. I sat down, took deep breath, focused on my solar plexus, then I opened the staircase and moved down the stairs one by one, as usual. After 7 stairs or so, I saw a presence at the bottom of the staircase. It was blocking the way and I couldn't get through the door. This was disquieting because I've never been interrupted like this. Usually things happen after the door, not before the door. The presence was not dangerous or aggressive, so I moved towards it. As I moved towards it, it opened another staircase for me to take, so it simply wanted me to go somewhere else. I walked down more stairs until I reached a space that was pitch black. I looked around, seeing if anything was there. I catched a glimpse of another presence at the distance. As I got towards him, I realized that it was in a horrifying state, similar to the picture I'm showing you. I did an emotional check, and after the fear dissipated, I felt curious toward the presence, and I asked him, "What is the burden that you're carrying?" The figure was not vocal, and so he did not respond. But something came from within me. In answer to Job, Jung referred to a concept called Christification of the many, and this seems to be his plight. Feeling empathy toward that figure, I asked if he needed any help, and he nodded. By doing so, a door nearby opened, and I went through it. Once through the door, I met another presence. It was a woman this time. She was lying on the floor in visible pain, and she was repeating, "My children, my children." Feeling emotionally stable, I approached her. I understood that she was a mother, and she now had to kill her own offsprings, and that's why she did not want to do it. Feeling the tragedy of the situation, I talked to her. And I said, "But nobody else can do it. You are the only one who can do it." But this was too painful for her. And I responded that, by experience, the more you delay your task, the worse it's going to get. She responded that she wanted to wait more. But seeing her in pain, I told her, what will it change? Maybe 100 more people will make it, but that's nothing compared to the task ahead. I took a break after that. I started speaking to her again and I said that starting your task might help more than waiting. People react to suffering and pain, and they don't use excess time well. But she did not respond. I tried another approach and said to her, "I understand that there are kids that you can't judge yet, but there are kids that are unredeemable. You should start with them. The process will get easier after that." That made an impact on her. And so I leave it at that. I said that I was going to visit again. On a side note, visiting again is absolutely essential when you start doing this work. Next time, I came back and found a letter on the ground. I read it, and it was her thanking me that she got going. I haven't seen that figure since. So what exactly happened here? This is what I understand. I witnessed two characters in my inner world who had terrible burdens. The first was a Christ figure who is shouldering something like the sins of the world, and the second one is a devouring mother who does not want to start eating her own children. By simply witnessing their struggle, it has helped them. This, in retrospect, explains the dream of the traumatized Christius and Sofia. And so for people who are curious, I suggest going back at the beginning of the video and things will make more sense. This happened a few months ago, and so I've came up with an explanation. See if it makes sense for you. I believe we are closing a cycle, an epoch, and thus the nurturing mother, which promoted growth and support at the beginning and middle of the epoch, is now transforming into a devouring mother, which you can see as the evolutionary pressures at the end of an age. As the mother is the one who has the power of life, she also has the power of death. And so she has to decide which offsprings is viable or not into the new epoch. So that's the positive role of the devouring mother. She facilitates the disintegration of the old, but that also means that she can condemn to death those who can't make it into the new. Nietzsche's concept of the last man and pure eternus are typical target of the devouring mother. This is what I try to represent with the red dot. This is the point in time where the devouring mother will make a selection and the new cycle or the new epoch can start. For people who have played the video game Death Stranding, the being that appears at the end of a cycle is called an extinction entity. I prefer not to say more on this because of massive endgame spoilers. So you can learn about it, but do it at your own risks. I really appreciate your time and attention throughout this video. I hope that you will consider what I've shared from the standpoint of your wiser self, and treat this information with respect. Links are in the description box. And until next time.